Welcome back to Next Gen Investing. It's now time for FOMO. We are talking Nvidia today, which is up now about 0.75%. Not a huge move to the upside, but seeing some positive news today for the entire AI and chip space, that we could see some of these restrictions imposed by the Biden administration be rescinded by the Trump administration. So joining us now to tell us more on this story is Caroline Woods, senior markets correspondent for the network. So Caroline, I would have thought we'd see a bigger move in Nvidia, but I'm not complaining about a 3% gain so far this week.
Hey there, Jenny. Yes, Nvidia higher once again today. Just to be clear, too, these aren't any export controls related to China. These are a set of rules that actually hadn't gone into effect yet. They were set to go into effect on the 15th, and we're hearing news that President Trump and the Trump administration is planning to rescind essentially these Biden-era, if you will, chip curbs. They were meant to really limit the export of AI chips worldwide, and so it's called the AI diffusion rule. It was set to go into effect on May 15th, and it essentially organized countries into 3 tiers, all of which have different restrictions on whether AI chips made by companies like Nvidia or AMD, Intel, could be shipped to those countries without a license. So it's all part of a broader effort to revise global semiconductor trade restrictions. We know that these rules have drawn opposition from tech companies like Microsoft and Oracle. They've argued that they would harm American companies' business prospects abroad without doing much to hinder China. We've also seen some foreign governments opposed to them as well. So, we had seen reports. The Commerce Department has come out and made comments on the reports that that framework won't go into effect on the 15th. Instead, the Trump administration is actually drawing its own framework up. According to Bloomberg, the rules are likely to focus on direct negotiations with nations like the UAE or Saudi Arabia. What we don't know, though, is how strict this new framework of rules is actually going to be. We know President Trump is going to the Middle East next week, so we'll see if there are any developments on that front, especially since, according to Bloomberg, those are some of the countries that the Trump administration is focused on. I did see a Raymond James analyst quoted as saying Trump will increase the total amount of chips allowed to be sold globally, starting with Saudi Arabia and the UAE, but this could also come with more enforcement to prevent the diversion of banned chips to China. So kind of bullish on one sense, but there could be reasons for caution. Nvidia came out with a statement saying, "We welcome the administration's leadership and new direction on AI policy. With the AI diffusion rule revoked, America will once again have a once-in-a-generation opportunity to lead the next industrial revolution and create high-paying U.S. jobs, build new U.S. supplied infrastructure, and alleviate the trade deficit." So, I do think it's important to note that this has nothing to do with the export controls in place for China. And we know that based on what we've heard from NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang and AMD's CEO Lisa Su, both were on CNBC earlier this week, and they talked about the potential loss of not being able to conduct business with China on the AI front. Jensen Huang had said not being able to sell to China, where he expects the AI market to be worth somewhere in the $50 billion range in the next few years. He said that would be a tremendous loss. AMD CEO Lisa Su said there should be a balance between export controls for national security as well as ensuring that we get the widest possible adoption of our technology. That's a good thing for U.S. jobs and the U.S. economy. So, there's definitely some pushback against some of these tech companies as well as it relates to China. But overall, in terms of these AI diffusion rules, it does look to be giving Nvidia a boost, as you said. Shares up a little less than 1% right now, up about 3% this week. Still in the red when you take a look at the year-to-date performance, down about 12%. But we're seeing names like AMD, Intel, pretty much strength across the board when it comes to the AI chip trade today.
Yeah, Caroline, it seems the general feeling is that this is ahead of those meetings in the Middle East, perhaps sort of a positive step for those negotiations. But in the grand scheme and sort of the general landscape that seems to be laid out, it does seem like a strategy of sort of isolating China on the trade front. We got the UK deal now, softening of some of these rules, maybe for some of these other countries. And it does seem that the focus, whether or not it's being explicitly said or not, does remain on China, as it was the first time around.
Yes, and I mean, we've heard some of the rhetoric coming from the White House too, as it relates to even the conversations that are going to happen in Switzerland between the U.S. and China this weekend. As it, they're basically saying don't expect a trade deal, just expect trade de-escalation from those 145% tariffs. So both the commentary out of China and the U.S. is holding pretty firm. I don't think that there's going to be a lot of development on that front, and that's why I think it's important to note that these export controls don't have, this diffusion doesn't have anything to do with those export controls from China. I mean, we'll have to see how it plays out, of course. I mean, if you take a look, analysts still very bullish on a name like Nvidia, despite the fact that, the U.S. is cracking down hard on China as well. So it doesn't seem to be changing the bullish calls from a lot of these analysts, doesn't seem to be changing the overall AI story. But, when you hear from the tech executives like Jensen Huang saying it could be a tremendous loss, I mean, I do think that's important to know.
Yeah, and I completely agree. And I think also a good point that there's still heavily unknowns that are circulating in NVIDIA, which is maybe why we actually aren't seeing more of a move today. This was, I think, somewhat expected to be at least revised by the Trump administration. So great takeaways there, and great look at NVIDIA. And the rest of course, the names seeing some strength today. AMD is another notable winner, as well as even Intel's higher. So appreciate it. Caroline Woods, Senior Markets Correspondent for the network.